All right, we're going to get right to opening at 7:38. We're going to get right to work on the Pledge of Allegiance. Dan, can you lead us in it?
Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag, the United States of America, and to the republic
which stands one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all. Thank you very much. We are going to get right to the first item on the agenda. Chris Pierce is joining us tonight from the Town of Wakefield Department of Public Works. Chris is in charge of the buildings for the town, and he has two different matters that he's going to bring before us tonight. The first of which concerns the possible window replacement at the Warren School. Chris?
Yes. The windows at the school have to be replaced. We thought we found the right window. Apparently Nancy and a few other people looked at it and felt differently. There's a few other things that fold into that with the seniors where you can't have a tilt-in window. A lot of them, Karen Burke was telling me, have dementia and they'll walk into the window. You can't have a 50-inch window that opens up one piece because of it's too heavy for them to lift. And there's a chance of them falling out the window once it's open because the screen doesn't act as a safeguard. There's also the fact that within a few years after those windows are installed, the stops may not work. So the window will come down like a guillotine. So with that being said, we went with the best possible window for the price that we could find. So after having a lengthy conversation with Nancy yesterday, was it yesterday? Yesterday.
Yep.
I brought the windows representative in and we came up with another alternative, but I don't know what the price is yet. They're building it now. So within the next 2 or 3 days, we should have that window. They have to test it, wind and water test after they build it to make sure it'll stand up. And then we'll have that window installed and Nancy, you can come by and look at it again. I sent you all the material that he sent me today, along with his concerns as well.
Chris, will it be a wooden window?
No.
Okay.
I can't touch a wooden window.
Why?
Money.
Okay. Well, the building is on the National Register of Historic Places. The reason of the building, I consulted with Brian Thompson, who consulted also with Peter Scott, whom I know you met both of them yesterday.
Right. I know Peter anyway.
And yeah, you knew them anyway.
Previous projects.
So yeah. And what I think we all feel, and I will open this up to discussion from the other members of the commission, is that those windows that we put in have to be faithful reproductions of the original windows. They can't be plastic. They can't be just vinyl. Can't they be vinyl clad? I know you don't. I know that you have a $400,000 budget and that you are being asked to do a huge job with probably half the money that you need to really do it. I understand that. It's a horrible situation for you to be in, and I apologize for adding to your load here, but I'm going to because these windows have to be exact reproductions. As Brian Thompson said to me, on the Warren School building, the windows are the building.
Then the only other alternative I have, if I don't have the money, would be to replace the window that I took out, put the plastic cover back on the window and leave it as is and not touch the windows. That's the only other alternative I'll have if I can't go with a window that fits into the budget that I have.
You have a certain amount of money, so why not do a phased replacement then? Phase it over several years. Couldn't you are all of those windows the old windows? Or have none of the windows on the first floor been replaced?
No window in that building has been touched.
None of them?
None.
Okay.
What would be the, rather than a vinyl or a plastic type, a composite type of wood? Do they make anything like that?
He seemed to think no in that price range. I mean, anything that I go with, even the 50-inch window would have cost $300-400 more per window. And we're talking 48 windows right now, just on that floor. And then you have the upper floor, which has, I think, a dozen square windows, which will be no problem to duplicate those. But you have the arch on that regular window, and you have the window itself, and then you have all the safeguards for the seniors that you need. It only makes sense to go with what we put in.
That type of window, it was not appropriate for the time period of the building. So opening the whole appearance of it, I shared the pictures with members of the commission. What do you guys think, Mark?
The second window that I sent you that I don't think they've seen looks better.
Better, but not good.
You know, the whole thing boils down to money. You know, if you don't have the money, you can't do the windows. And if I don't have it, I can't get it. There's no magic bucket I'm going to pull this money out of. This was a ARPA fund that came to us, and originally it was set up as we were going to bring the Board of Health up there, and we were going to build office space up there. That's what this whole thing came about. But when we got the money, we were told at that meeting that it was just for senior center use only. So we couldn't use it at all for space that we wanted. So if I don't have the money to do it, I can't do it. I'm going to finish the project and not do the windows. I mean, that's the only other alternative I have, unless we can come up with a solution on what you want in there that's comparable to the price that I'm paying now for the same window.
Nancy, are there any historical grants out that we could tap into?
Well, the only thing we could do is to, that I know of, is to try for a preservation project grant from the Mass Historical Commission. The deadline date for that is February 15th of next year. And that, but the ARPA funds have to be spent by a certain time. But I don't think that we should be using federal funds to do replacement windows that would be detrimental to a structure that is on the National Register of Historic Places. If we were to work it out so that somehow or other you could do some of the windows, then maybe you could apply for funding from the town for next year's windows and apply for this matching grant from the Mass Historical Commission.
Well, see, the problem in itself with that is that at that point, there's going to be seniors up there. I can't start pulling windows out with people there.
There are no seniors up there now, are there?
But if I phase it out over so many months, years, or whatever, there's going to be people up there.
And
then it'll be all finished trim, finished paint. It'd be more of an issue for me to do it that way than it would be to do it now with nobody up there.
We owe it to the town. We owe it to future generations. We owe it to the neighborhood to do a faithful reconstruction of the window.
Did they see the second window?
I didn't see the second window. I saw a drawing of the second window that does not look like the existing window.
I guess we're at a standoff then. I don't know what to say. I don't have any magical money that I can pull out and spend on these windows. So,
With the amount of money that you have, I realize that you're trying to work magic with the situation as it is. I understand that. I understand the situation that you're in.
right,
But we have a job to do too. And,
I understand that.
we're gonna do it. And, will you have enough money to bring the building up to code
Sure.
for, will you have an elevator installed for the seniors to go up to the
The
second?
elevator's already there. It's been
It's
there since
already
the
there?
beginning. Yep.
And is there a non-wooden set of safety stairs to exit the building in case of fire?
Yeah, the stairs aren't wooden.
Okay,
And the
that's,
stairs come down. You get off each floor, it comes down. There's an exit door that goes out to the outside. I've already brought the building inspector and the fire chief through.
all right. Well, they know that. I don't.
Okay, I'm just letting you know.
Okay. Okay.
I didn't just pick a window and say, oh, this looks good. The price is right. Let's throw this in. This went through a lot of research with us meeting with Karen of the from the senior center and different meetings with other people just to get the right window for that place. Wood is out of the question. It's just way too expensive. Just like people put vinyl replacement windows in their home because it's cheaper. It's not the fact that they, everybody wants, a $5,000 Anderson window, but you just can't afford it. You want champagne and I'm on a beer budget. So
I understand
that's where
that,
we
but
are
if
now.
if you didn't address the windows, if you open half of the second floor up to the seniors and finish those rooms with appropriate windows, can't you close off
No,
the other
I don't
one
have the,
still?
no, I don't have enough. What about the 20 grand you had that you were gonna put the new roof on the Little Red Schoolhouse?
Yeah, that's gotta go there.
Does it? Can it go to
Yeah.
the windows?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, if it comes down to the fact that I don't have the money, I'm just gonna put the original window back in there and close it off and just leave the windows the way they are. And I'll finish the inside. That's the only other alternative I have.
You guys notice Julie's hand is up?
I'm sorry, this computer is foreign to me, so, Julie, if you want to speak, go ahead.
Hi, Nancy. Thank you. I like what I just heard. Let's not do the windows. This conversation is happening in reverse. Before the ARPA funds were headed toward the Warren School, this conversation should have taken place. A lot of this could have been resolved prior to determining how much of the ARPA funding would be going to the Warren School. Now it seems like the historical perspective of the building was not thought of prior. It's a historical building. It's always been a historical building. That's not news. So perhaps we should do what was just said, not put any windows in and look for grants and such. Having taught in a historical building very similar to the Warren School in a North Shore community, we tried the plastic windows. They got clouded. They became opaque. You could not see out of them. And the historical commission in the community that I taught in demanded that we replace them. And it didn't take very long for them to become almost foggy looking. This has always been designated as on the historical registry. I have a list in front of me of buildings that have been removed from the historical registry for issues such as this, the windows. They matter. And there are so many of them. And they're on all four sides of the building. It's disappointing to me that the neighborhood wasn't notified of any of this. I do know that about 14 or 15 years ago, just a simple cell phone tower was going to be put on top of the Warren School. And yeah, 200 of them came out of the woodwork and everybody thought, oh, it's going to be about a safety issue, about radiation or whatever it was. It wasn't. For most of the neighborhood, it was aesthetics. An awful lot of the park area, that area with the gates is called the park area of Wakefield, is historical. It's disappointing to me that the windows are an afterthought. This should have been a discussion held long before the ARPA vote. Again, I like what I heard, that we wait and we figure out a way to get the proper windows. Having taught again, like I said, in a building very similar to this, very similar to the Lincoln School, we did use half of the top floor while some windows were being put in. That's completely manageable. Thank you, Nancy, for letting me speak.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Any other member of the Historical Commission? Dan, any other
I have
thoughts?
I do have a quick question, if I may.
Sure.
Can the windows be like restored or they have to be replaced?
That would be a question I would bump over to Chris.
Again, it's a money thing. They tried to restore them originally in the first rehab that they did on the first floor. And I met with Jack Roberto and I met with Wayne. I didn't meet with Wayne Tar, but I talked to Wayne Tar. And they butchered the windows. It's tough to do. These windows are in very, very bad shape. They're not even, you can't even get at them from the inside of the building. They're covered with a sheet of plywood, plexiglass.
Hmm.
They don't even open. They haven't opened well, I've been here 14 years for the town. They haven't opened since I've been here.
Wow.
Yeah, well, the building was built in 1897. I would beseech you, Chris, to look at other alternatives. There are other vendors that make, I know you have budgetary considerations and everything else.
We
but
looked
I'm
at
saying-
Anderson. We looked at Pella. We looked at the windows that are in there now. Harvey, representative, also works with a bunch of other companies that he's checking through. But I don't think for the amount of money that we have that we're going to find a different window.
And I'm just saying to you, I really do think that we could find a compromise where we would do it in phases. And that's what I would ask would be explored. We have a member of the town council with us, Bob.
Well, Chris is correct. The town council allocated ARPA funds to do improvements at the senior center with the limitations that he explained earlier. I know because I got the material today that Chris has been prudent in working with the company to try to find alternative windows. I would suggest, I don't know if Joe Conway's on here. There is a Jay Conway on. I would suggest that Chris and Joe speak with Steve Mayo and go through that chain of command. And then perhaps you, Nancy, and Steve can sit down with Joe and Chris and see what alternatives you have. But the amount of money that was allocated in ARPA is the final amount, and it must be allocated by December 31st of this year. Doesn't have to be spent by then, but it has to be allocated by then. So Chris is trying to expedite things to get that money allocated by the end of the year. He's down to about 6-7 months to do that. But that would be my suggestion. I mean, the town council just allocated the money and then directed Steve to work with the staff to make a determination as to what improvements need to be done. Frankly, I didn't know anything about the windows, nor should I, until today. But that would be my suggestion about the way to go forward, since there is a disagreement between the historical commission and town officials as to what should be done.
Joe Conway? Do you want to weigh in on this?
Sure. So Joe Conway, the Public Works Director, for those that might not know me. So I think what Chris is trying to say is throughout this process, he's trying to balance two things, right? The historical character to the building, but then also Karen, who manages the seniors, had some concerns with the safety of what the new occupancy will be. So he's trying to find whatever that middle ground is. But I think Bob made a good recommendation, and we'll go back. We'll talk with Steve, kind of lay out all our options and see what our roadmap ahead might be.
Okay. See, this is why Bob is my hero. And so I think that's the best suggestion. And I really appreciate what Chris does for us every day. I really appreciate him, the work he does and the work the DPW does. But on this, we really have to stand firm, I think.
Can I ask the question, Nancy?
Sure, Dan.
To Chris, who's the expert on this, how much heat loss are we having from those windows during the wintertime that it's costing the town as far as, I don't know if that's oil furnace or gas or,
It's gas. Well, you're losing a lot with the old windows in place. Some of them close, but they don't close all the way. So the plastic that's up there right now is almost like a sheet of plastic, and it just gets freezing cold up there. Heat's on all the time up there, so there's a huge heat loss.
But you're not going to be able to put in air conditioning for there, huh?
No, that's not true. I have a proposal
Oh.
for air conditioning, but we're trying to work on that too, to get that as well. So,
Okay. All right.
but that's on the inside, and it's, you know, it's one of the components that we haven't quite figured out yet, but we'll be getting into it. We do have a proposal, a couple of them for different types of AC unit.
Okay. And Doug, Heath, and Allison, do you want to, your neighbors in the, it's in my neighborhood as well. Do you want to weigh in on it? No, maybe not. Okay. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. And I really do appreciate everyone's cooperation in trying to work through this kind of thorny issue. Certainly, this is going to be a good thing to do something to help the building get to be more habitable. Surely the project is a good thing overall for the town, but the windows we really do need to stand firm on the windows. Okay, so I look forward to
May I make a comment, please?
certainly.
I'm not part of your commission or anything like here. I'm actually tuned in so that I could hear about the rededication of the monument. But earlier this year, before the decision was made to get the 105 howitzers for Memorial Day, I was in the process of tracking out and laying out to firing some 3-inch ordnance rifles for the end of the ceremony. And in that, I had to, because of it's black powder, and because of that, you have to be much more careful than what the National Guard did. Anyway, the bottom line is I was walking around it and laying out the area, and I spoke to a person who was working on the gazebo. And it turns out he was from a trade school out of East Boston, I believe, that are doing the work on the gazebo and maintaining all of the rebuilding all of the wood that is rotted and such like that on the supports for the gazebo. And my experience with these guys from the trade schools are that they're really good, and they're trying to love to do jobs like this. And this may be something that should be looked at, is whether trade school, be it either our metro or this place that is now doing the work for the gazebo, could help out with these windows. And that's my comment.
All right, well, we appreciate your comment. And I look forward to hearing more of our working toward a solution together to this problem. We will be sailing next to the bandstand itself. Chris also has the opportunity to be in charge of that project, right, Chris?
That's correct.
Okay, aren't you lucky?
I love working with you, Nancy.
I'm glad we're doing the bandstand, not the gazebo, though.
Yes, it's the bandstand.
I'm
So
still
that
calling
was-
it the gazebo. I'm trying to break that habit, call it a bandstand, but. All right, we did an exploratory of the bandstand itself, and we found out that the columns themselves, the bottom of the columns themselves were rotten and pretty much gonna fall over. So we reached out to the North Bennett School, and we got 2 girls to come out and take a look at it. And they're working with us. We have a welder and we have a mason. And we came up with devised a plan on how to fit these back in the right way. Nice and solid and tight, cut away all the rot. And then eventually we'll reframe them and redo the columns. At the same time, we had a mason look at the outside, and the block itself had sagged, some were pushing out, a lot of mortar loss. So we had to remove the trees that were on either side, the bushes, to be able to get at that and see the extent of the damage. And it was pretty bad. Pretty much the only thing holding that up was the platform and the rods that go through the columns themselves to the roof. So we have a mason that's taking apart the block, putting it back together, securing everything around there. And the girls are finishing up now the last pieces to that. And then after that, we'll have them pop open a couple boards up top and just take a peek inside and see what's going on in there. So that's where we are with that. And further on, if we decide that, or if you guys want to have it, discussion about the paint, that's fine. We had a document that Nancy has. I sent it to her. You received that, Nancy, am I correct?
Yep. I
And it
did.
shows the paint colors and the original. So we're kind of following that as a pattern, as a road to get this done.
Well, I have to interject there too, Chris, because these colors don't look, now, this is copy of a copy of a copy, and I don't know what the
Right,
original paint
right, I
chips
think
look like. As they could have looked entirely different, but we were all thrilled with the colors that were selected for the bandstand for the WCNA restoration of the structure in 1993. The bandstand's roof needs to be red.
Right, and it will be.
It can't be
'cause
brown.
No, it'll be red. It'll be the same color that's there, that was there originally in 93. That's actually the document from 93.
These aren't the colors, though.
Because he lost, printing it out, lost the
Yeah,
color.
I
But
really
the
need
name
to,
and the name and the color code are there.
yeah, but I really need to see these colors. We need to
Yeah.
see these colors before it's painted.
That's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. I can go get samples.
Yeah, because we have, I don't know if Peter Scott. I don't know if you know his wife Cheryl is,
Vaguely.
yeah, she is a genius at colors, and I wouldn't be surprised if she had something to do with helping to select those colors. But the bandstand's roof absolutely has to be red.
And it will be. The lady that wrote that report, Sarah, is one of the top 5 people in the country on paint matching. And she actually matched it the last time and came up with the colors in the codes and everything else. Obviously, from printing it off a million times, the
Yeah.
colors are faded in the picture, so it doesn't give you a good example. But like I said, the codes are still there, so we can go down and get those paints. That's not
Really. because I even have the quote of that was in the newspaper at the time when when the structure was dedicated the first time, saying that the dome-like top, the color of the heart's blood of the indulgent taxpayer. Although it would be doubtless a very handsome structure and a very worthy ornament for the park, and I'm sure it will be that again. I have been disappointed, as I've already shared with you, Chris, that we haven't been more brought into this project as the Historical Commission. But I'm happy that you're working with us now.
Right. I made the call to you as soon as we got the structure secured.
Okay. Because these girls from North Bennett Street, they're carpenters. They're not preservationists or architects or structural engineers. But
They're
guys,
historical preservationists. They've
They're
worked on a
not.
lot of houses in Martha's Vineyard. They have a huge resume, each of them, of different historical buildings that they've worked on.
Okay. Would
Can
you
I
share with
about
us
band-
their names and contact information?
Sure.
Okay.
Can I ask the question, Nancy? to
Yep.
Chris? How stable is that flagpole on top of the bandstand? Is that secure? Could that need to be?
I don't
replaced?
know yet. I haven't been up there to take a peek yet. Once we
Oh,
get
God.
done with the securing of the columns and everything else, we will get up there and check that. That is on our list to check.
It's always nice to see the flag flying on 4th of July.
Exactly. And that's where we were headed if the pole is secure.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question for Chris?
Nancy, it's Julie Scott. Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, certainly.
Just moving forward, I know when he was on the council, she was hoping to have a yearly update on Wakefield's historical structures given to the town council. I hope now that she's gone, that continues. And I do know, having met with Peter Scott and Wakefield Center neighborhood and talked a lot about the gazebo / bandstand, I always get confused which it is. We always worry about maintenance going forward because it had been quite a lot of decades between the town actually doing the maintenance and not Wakefield Center neighborhood. So will there be a plan moving forward when this is done on how maintenance will be overseen by the town? Thank you.
Chris?
Do you want me to answer that? Is that
Yeah,
a question for me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
absolutely. Once it's done, it'll definitely have maintenance done on it on a regular basis. That's how we discovered that it was ready to fall over.
Well, no, actually, a resident discovered that. So, and it was a member of Friends of Lake Quannapowitt who discovered that. So that's exactly what I mean about having periodic updates with the town council so that things don't go so long before they're noticed and worked on by the town. I think the deterioration of the structure didn't need to get as far as it did had there been regular looking at and scheduled maintenance by the town. That's my point. Thank you.
Well, if the person who discovered this had gotten in touch with us,
They
which I
did.
never heard of this, I've never talked to this person at all, ever.
Steve
heard
Mayo-
any-
Steve Mayo did.
Okay, well, he never relayed the information to me.
Within the past year and a half, that's how the information got to Steve. And I think Joe Conway may have met with John Sophia. So that's where it came from.
Yeah, we and your point is well taken, Julie. And Chris, we look forward to having better communication, I think, from the Board of Public Works, not the board, but the department, a little more regularly with the Wakefield Historical Commission. I realize, once again, you have a lot on your plate and everything else, but a line of communication is vital, I think, to help protect our historic buildings.
I also think that
and-
I have gotten in touch with you. I'm probably one of the only people that calls you.
And I give you credit for that. I tell
Yeah,
them.
no, I'm just saying, it's not like we're turning our back on you guys. We don't. We know you exist and we know we need your help. And
Right.
we can't complete projects without co-doing them. So I understand that. And that's why I placed the call to you originally.
Right, right,
That's why I placed the call about the gazebo. We
right,
need your help.
right,
So-
okay.
I think over the years, I know there's a permit or something you have to fill out to use the common and also the bandstand. And I think over the years, there's an awful lot of staples and nails and things that go into holding signs. And maybe they should have that written down somewhere that you can't put staples or screws or nails inside the bandstand itself. It looks like a telephone
point.
pole.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
There's a lot of carvings in there too.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, we got a National Register plaque to put on the bandstand and we were told, forget it. Because somebody will take it down in a week. So it's discouraging, but it is a public building. It's open to the public. That's what we want.
Can I ask one more question, Nancy? It's Julie
Yes.
Scott again. Will there be a plan for any shrubbery or anything to surround the base?
Julie, I'll take this one. It's Joe. At some point in time, yes. We will probably come back and talk about that. Both Chris and I, we had to remove, like you said, for the masonry. And then also there'll be some staging because we'll have to access for paint and things like that, the upper parts. We've seen pictures where there's been some, I'll call them, for lack of a better term, relatively low, looks like more colorful flowering type plants in there. But you know, in reality, is like with the paint, we don't really have any direction we were going to go other than in kind or take suggestions from this group or the town council or anybody else that wants to weigh in on it. So we'll be doing something, but that's not set in stone yet. That'll be open for discussion.
And one other quick question, you just reminded me. It's got electric, so we can do some Christmas lights on the top. Will there be any more electric put in, or is it going to be what's been there?
So when this whole thing started in the beginning, I talked to John. I had more conversations, I think, with Peter Scott than I can remember at this point.
That's why I'm asking, because we've sort of talked a little bit about it at Wakefield Center neighborhood meetings.
Yep. So this is something, I think we originally thought, right, for the perspective, this would be more of a cosmetic project. And then Chris mentioned unraveling some of the rot on those columns. And, you know, someone like Peter, who I would say is the expert, he was the last one that did the renovation, didn't know the extent of what existed kind of inside of those things until we started opening up. But the electric is something we're going to look at because we know that, like, when WCNA is up there, we want to make sure that if we could get enough juice to that where they could do what they need to do, that it's there ready to go. You know, maybe putting some new lights in it and things like that. So we're taking a look at all of that stuff. I think, I don't want to speak for Michael, Chris, but I don't know if he seems to think that the electric's adequate or if we're going to be upgrading the service to that. But anything that we need to do, we're going to check all the boxes and cross everything off so that when we're done with it, we're hands off, and then it just becomes a routine maintenance thing for us.
Okay, thanks. I have one quick idea. I have not run this by anybody, but I saw this up in a beautiful area in Vermont. They had a similar structure on their town common, beautiful white churches surrounding the town common, very similar to Wakefield. They actually had something in the ground that was a solar collector and shined light on all sides of their structure on the common, and it was stunning. I don't know if that's practical for Wakefield. I don't even know what it was, but it was all year long. It gathered the energy from the sun and it shone on that structure at night, 365 days a year, and it was beautiful. I don't know how appropriate that would be. I know we use the grass, people use the common for all sorts of different things, but I just wanted to put that out there. I haven't talked about that with Wakefield Center or anything, but it is something that I saw that I thought was quite stunning.
All right, I have one other note to bring up with regard to that comment is that it's been a long time dream to have a markers of some kind on that common, memorializing it as the resting place of hundreds of the town's first settlers, because that's where the original graveyard of the town was. So once we get that planned and funded, I will look forward to talking to Joe Conway on where to place it.
Sure, we can definitely do that. I think we'd done that with like the Soldiers and Sailors and the Hartron House before, talking something like those. Or a little bit more prominent.
No, a little bit more, because it won't be at a more of a populated place. And I was actually hoping if the funding could be acquired to have it look like the gravestones in the old burying ground, so carved from slate.
I think maybe if we connect offline and kind of align, and then we
Okay.
can present something like that, to the town council.
To the town council.
They'd ultimately want to, weigh in on, approving that.
Absolutely. And
yeah, no.
and placing it in an appropriate and yet not terribly obtrusive place. But yet it is a place that is actively used, and that's wonderful. It's the spirit of the town. It is the town of Wakefield, but it's also the final resting place of a lot of people. So anyway, thank you. Thank you, Joe. I would like to talk to you about that.
Yeah, no problem. I think as we get more, we could talk more about it, and then as we get more into the color palette and things like that, and the planting bed, we'll make sure to keep bringing that up.
Okay.
I think some towns put on what they called interpretive panels, and you could just arrow off, this would be where the burying ground was. This is the bandstand. This is the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, or one marker that would tell you in a history of each statue or memorial. Even a QR code.
QR codes are us.
And that's coming from an
All
old.
right. Trust Dan to be have his finger on the future. I want to thank you. Yeah, I want to thank you to Joe Conway and to Chris Pierce for attending the meeting, and I'd like to move on to our next topic, unless there is if someone else had an issue. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
All right, the next issue on our agenda is approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Did everyone receive them?
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion to accept the minutes as sent? Somebody, Therese?
Motion to accept.
Okay. Second,
Second.
discussion? No, hearing none. We will accept the minutes of the last meeting. Our next agenda item is a review of year-end budget issues, and we traditionally spend $98 per year in order to subscribe to the American Association for State and Local History. $125 per year to subscribe to and be a member of Historic New England, and $50 a year to participate in Preservation Mass. In addition, we have to reimburse me for paying for the post office box, which was a whopping $222. So the total expenditures would be $495. Discussion? Can I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept.
Okay. Second?
Second,
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Now we will move on to the discussion of the Civil War Monument rededication ceremony. Bob, did you want to take the lead on this, or do you want me to just briefly fill them in?
Well, yeah, I'll start, but I'd like Joe, if he's still on, to kind of give an update on the actual restoration efforts, like Ann did with us today. The first thing I'm going to do is defend the town council and the Department of Public Works on, as far as our emphasis on looking at historic structures. I speak regularly with Mr. Mayo and Joe about historic structures, especially the Soldiers and Settlers Civil War Memorial. Also recall that a couple months ago, the town council allocated $25,000 in ARPA funds for the town to go out and get repair estimates for historic structures. So that's something else that you as the historical commission should weigh in on. If you know if there's any structures around town that you would like to get repair estimates for, we've got $25,000 set aside that has to be allocated by the end of the year for that exact purpose. So,
And we have a leaking roof at the West Ward School.
right, so that's
It is-
something to bring to the attention of Steve and Joe, and I talked to Steve about this today. And I know he talked to Joe and said Chris can go out and get that repair estimate. Is that right, Joe?
Yes, so the roofer that we have on contract should actually be there tomorrow. So I should know what the ballpark for replacement we're going to be in sometime around Monday or Tuesday, probably the latest.
Okay, because the last roof that was put on the building was put on a very long time ago. And Joe, your
Yeah.
aunt, Ruth Ann Smith, was the president of the PTO there.
That is probably a little while ago, so I'm going to say
Yeah, it was a little while ago, and she was definitely a real introduction to Wakefield for me.
it's probably
Uh,
time.
Yeah, it is time because it's well over 30 years.
Yeah, so what they'll end up doing is looking at it and stripping it, replacing it in kind. And we'll try to get something that has a manufacturer's warranty for the 30, 40-year period. So hopefully it'll be up there decent for a long time. But we'll have a better idea where we stand sometime between now and say probably next Tuesday.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Joe.
And the other quick thing is the Soldiers and Settlers Civil War Memorial is a good example of how the town can effectuate getting repair efforts done. In this case, in October of 22, the town council allocated $10,000 to get a repair estimate. Department of Public Works went out and got that estimate right away. Then DPW recommended to the Capital Planning Committee that the $300,000 to repair it be put in the DPW budget. They recommended approval, and then unanimously at town meeting in the spring of 2023, the town voted to approve that. So with this $25,000 that you have for these other repair estimates, if we find out that there are items or structures that need to get repaired, we can follow potentially that same path to get the funding for it. Besides going after grants, I know we've gotten a $15,000 grant for the Civil War Memorial as well. So, Joe, if you could just start out with talking about the restoration efforts by the company down in Watertown and where we are on that, and then I can talk about the ceremony.
Sure. So I'll give you kind of the Reader's Digest. Councilor Vincent basically explained the ask process. You know, I can remember myself personally when the World War II memorial was done. A lot of eyes kind of naturally focused on that and said, this is probably something we need to give attention to. I personally just find myself in the spot where now my fingerprints are on, I get to, try to accomplish that. So it might have been for you, Nancy, or someone who's been with the Historical Commission for quite a while. When you folks had Daedalus
Yep.
come out
But
the first time,
Yeah.
so we called a whole bunch of different places and we put it out to RFP, but we contacted them directly because they were intimately familiar with it. The gentleman's name, who's the principal, there's Josh Crane. He came out, gave us an assessment because basically I didn't even know how to put together a bid package for this to be able to solicit people adequately, right? I needed help writing the scope. So Counselor Vincent advocated for some funding to help us do that. We ended up going through that process. Daedalus from Watertown was the awardee to that. We did catch some interest from a couple of firms throughout the country and actually one from Canada. It worked out kind of conveniently that, you know, the folks that are doing the restoration just happened to be a quick ride down either Route 2 or 95. This fall, as everybody probably remembers, so the four standing figures, I'll call them, you know, mid-range, so about half height, saw the most amount of damage. I think, if memory serves me correct, one of them was kicked off in 1972, lost the hand, and different parts of the figures were deteriorated to the point, you know, where you could noticeably see it from, you know, greater than 50 feet. So those were removed. Those were created and trucked to their studio in Watertown, and they have been working on them all winter long with the wrought iron fence in rebuilding that. I think Jen McDonald, the town's communications manager, actually just put out a couple of updated pictures of some before and afters throughout the town's website to see some of that work. I know, I think the cannon tender was missing a hand. And some other things. So progress on that has been going very good. Simultaneously, probably as busy work, but I don't want to speak for them. They've been fixing the fence that used to surround it, and the goal would be to completely strip that and refinish it once it's all repaired, and then get reinstalled back. They're telling us now that they are on target to come out sometime mid-June or just after the 4th of July, and they're actually going to start doing some work on the vertical pedestals itself. They're basically going to give it a head to toe scrubbing, clean everything up, fix any gaps that are in it. I know at the bottom there are angular pieces that come off that have some joints on them that originally were poured with lead. Those will all be repaired and brought back to hopefully the condition that's about 99.9% of what it was when it was dedicated in 1902. So I know I went super fast, but some cool things will start to be happening. You'll be able to see it live and in person out there pretty soon.
Does that restoration include the two cannons?
It does. So when they're done with the Soldiers and Sailors Monument, they're going to come out. When they're out there, they're going to take a look at the cannons, or they've already taken a look at the cannons. But what they're going to do is they're going to, you know, touch them up or rehab them, whatever is appropriate, you know, based on their expertise. And then in the end, to a point I think that Ms. Scott made earlier, we've asked them for some sort of schedule of maintenance for this. So, you know, I never would have imagined that I would have been maintaining something like this. So I wanted to make sure that we had kind of a roadmap ahead. So what is the periodic maintenance to it? Do you seal the granite periodically? Like, how do we keep this thing going forward? So in 100 years from now, somebody isn't in the spot that we were this past fall. Well, that's kind of where we stand with all that.
Well, I think when the town accepted it from Harriet Flint, it was said that we'd take care of it forever. And this is the forever, the 100 years. So
I gotta tell you, in my opinion, outside of, you know, the vandalism that got repaired in 1972, that thing is all held together just by weight. And for 120 years, whatever she had paid for that at the time, she absolutely got her money's worth, because that stood through a lot over time.
I think when they work on these new pedestals or realign the pedestals on the monument, they should look underneath, because I think in Peabody Square, when they lifted up some of the pedestals, there was secrets underneath that who knows what's underneath there. Almost like the old iron sign under the mast, when they redo it, they leave coins and memorabilia from the past.
There could be. Maybe we'll, you know, that's one thing I guess we'll have to consider, because we'll obviously be replacing, you know, the mulch and whatnot in the area when we're done. Maybe we'll have to metal detect it and make sure that we don't miss anything of any historic importance while we're at it.
You mentioned that there was two cannon being worked on. there were originally 4 cannon. Is that 2 cannon in addition to the 2 that are still in place that you're talking about?
So their scope is to refurbish and give some attention to everything that's out there. I can't remember if it's 2 or 4. I think it's at least 2. It could be 4. So whatever's out there now is going to get some attention in this
Well,
project.
I will say this here, that the Al Gosnick and from like 1980 through 1990s took care of those cannon. He came in on a yearly basis and did it. I don't know if that's in any of your records or anything like that. He was the commander of the 5th Massachusetts Light Artillery at the time. And so it has been done, and there were 4 cannons. Just up until recently, there was 4 cannons on that in that display.
I did not know that. Thank you. I don't have anything on why a cannon may or may not have been removed, but it's certainly something I think we should look into.
Yeah. And does your plans to refurbish the carriages also, not just the cannons themselves?
Complete everything. So whatever attention needs to be shown to the brass, the painted pieces, the wooden spindles on them, basically from where they anchor into the pads underneath them, everything that can be seen.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
So I'll note that today's daily item, and you probably can't see it with the glare, but it actually has a picture of the restoration efforts on the monument. And on the last page of the article, there's a place on the town website where you can learn more about the project. So there's also signs around the fence over there talking about that the restoration project is underway. So this afternoon, well, let me start this way. Unlike Veterans Day or Memorial Day or Martin Luther King Day, there is no town board, commission, or committee responsible for the rededication ceremony. So I took it upon myself with Steve Mayo to have a meeting today with some interested parties. So we had a meeting this afternoon with Doug Lyons, Superintendent of Schools, Steve Engel, the school committee chair, Nancy Bertrand from the Historical Commission, Paul Cancelliere from the Veterans Advisory Board, Ann Waite from DPW, Jen McDonald, the communication director for the town, and I had a meeting today to kind of brainstorm ideas about the restoration or rededication ceremony after the restoration efforts are completed. We discussed a lot of different dates. What we penciled in was Sunday, June 1st. For a variety of reasons. Some of them weather related. Most importantly, the original dedication date was June 17th of 1902. June 17th this year is in the middle of the week. And in looking at the fact that June 15th was Father's Day, and Dr. Lyons appropriately pointed out that the kids are out of school in sometime in early June, and we want students from the elementary, middle, and high school to participate in this rededication ceremony. We penciled in June 1st as a date to have this ceremony. But once again, that's not cemented in stone. That was just something that we collectively talked about. It's also the 160th.
Isn't that date very close to Memorial Day?
Yes,
I mean, it's going to be.
We had a long discussion about. In fact, Paul Cancelliere, his idea was to actually have the ceremony the same day as Memorial, but we decided not to do that. The problem with trying to do it in April, which is the 160th anniversary of the end of the Civil War, is you had Easter in there, and it's the 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord. So it would be difficult to get reenactors and whatnot to come out there in April, we thought. We looked at May as well. Once again, this isn't cemented in stone. It's just an idea a collection of people had as to when we might want to do this. We had a lot of different discussions about what types of things we want to do. I will tell you that there is an emphasis on making sure that the students are involved in this process as far as putting together and talking about the history behind the fact that we were South Reading during the Civil War, that Nancy, Miss Flint donated the $11,000 for this in 1896, and it was dedicated in 1902, and just some of the history behind the Civil War and some of the folks who gave their lives during the Civil War, Wakefield residents who gave their lives during the Civil War. Nancy actually volunteered to start working on biographies of some of the folks who gave their lives during the Civil War. And the idea was maybe having students read a bit of the biography of each of those service members. We also talked about, should we invite the governor? Should we invite Congressman Moulton? You know, what role do we want politicians to play in this? I'll note that in 1902, the governor of Massachusetts did attend the dedication ceremony, and Dan Benjamin is correct. It was the chair of the Board of Selectmen at that time who made the promise that we would forever upkeep the memorial, and now we have an opportunity to do that 123 years later. We talked about having fife and drum corps come out, ROTC units from some of the area high schools. One of the ideas was, rather than just having a 1-hour ceremony, maybe seeing if we can have the Little Red Schoolhouse, Hartshorn House, the Americo Civic Center, and maybe some of the churches open up, and we could have reenactors at some of those different places. And Nancy Bertrand has the connections with the reenactors, Paul Cancelier with the fife and drum corps, and actually maybe have like a little festival that day where people could go to some of the different locations and see reenactors, fife and drum corps. Maybe some of the students could give speeches, the Gettysburg Address, things of that nature. So today was just a brainstorming session, once again, because there is no town board or commission or committee responsible for for this. I mean, the other thing I'll say that I insisted on this, and I told the group today, and I'll tell you all as well. I want Nancy to be specially recognized at this, because she is the person that's really kept a lot of the history of Wakefield alive, and I think that's very important. So I want her to be recognized that day, and I also volunteered to be the MC for the event. Now, truth be told, I will not be on the town council when this takes place on June 1st, because my term ends the end of April of next year. But I did want to, because I spent a lot of time on this, I asked the folks if anybody had any problems if I emceed this, and people seem to think that was fine. So I don't know when we're going to have another meeting. This is not an official, commission or board or whatnot. It's just a collection of folks that Steve got together so we could start brainstorming on ideas. I don't know to what extent the town council is going to want to structure anything as far as having a committee. I will brief the town council on this at our next meeting, but I thought it was important to kind of get the ball rolling in terms of a rededication ceremony, since the restoration efforts are well underway. So if anybody has any questions for me, I'll be happy to try to answer them now.
Yeah, Bob, this is Dale Finley again. We talked at the memorial ceremony, and you'd indicated that there was going to be a meeting at Town Hall on Wednesday at 3 o'clock, which I showed up for.
No
one was there. Huh?
No, it was all, maybe we miscommunicated, it was always today.
Yeah, okay. And I've also expressed to a number of people in the town about having a living history on the lower common, okay, with tents from Civil War type encampment, okay?
Yeah, we talked about that today, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's so many monuments located close to the Soldiers and Settlers Memorial, we talked about expanding it to the entire common area with having living history, as well as having maybe some of that living history over at Hartshorn House, the Little Red Schoolhouse. These were just some of the ideas that we tossed out today. So yes, the living history was a major component of it. When I was stationed in Europe with the military, and I took my kids to go see the Battle of Hastings, and there were just placards to read, they could care less. When I took them back and there were reenactors reenacting the Battle of Hastings,
yeah,
they were mesmerized. So yeah. I think having living history, is important for all the residents to come out and, you know, see what life was like back in the 1860s.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
So I'm sorry if you thought it, if I said it was yesterday. I'm sorry. It was always today at 3:30. So that's when we met at town hall.
I see. Okay.
I think we should look into if there's any members of the Flint family still around in Wakefield, Reading, or North Reading that might be invited to this, seeing that it was their family that originally donated the monument.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I looked her up one day and I don't think she had any children. So I had that idea a few months ago about trying to see if we could find some living relatives. Because I know she donated the library in North Reading, I believe. She donated to many different municipalities. So if anyone has any leads on the Flint family, that would help. Yeah, it was Harriet Newell Flint was her name. I forget her maiden name. I think it might
Newell.
be
Newell was her maiden name.
Newell. Thank you.
Her ancestors and her husbands were among the first settlers here in this town. And then, of course, she and her husband moved to North Reading, but he died and she took over the business and made it thrive, but she had no children. So I don't know how successful we'll be in finding descendants, but maybe they know of some in North Reading.
Yeah, maybe in North Reading. I think it was the library. So I was going to reach out to them and see if they had any information concerning, you know, any of her descendants. The other thing that Steve Engels brought up that I thought was fascinated by, and somebody mentioned this as far as the current structure, was to do a time capsule. And I think that would be a good idea for us to do a time capsule, bury it somewhere out near there, and then perhaps recommend that the town of Wakefield open it up on June 17th, 2102, which would be 200 years after the memorial was originally dedicated. And it could have things like coins from this time frame, you know, maybe notes from residents, students, things like that. But I thought that was a pretty good idea too. Maybe contemplating having a time capsule.
Bitcoins and a, you know, QR code.
Bitcoin.
And if anyone has any ideas, or if you know any, please feel free to tell Nancy the ideas. She'll relay them to me, because this is a community-wide project. I saw almost 1,000 people at the Memorial Day event on Monday at the Common. I think something like this will bring out a lot of people in town, because this is a novel event to have to rededicate something that, you know, if you look at your history, it was built in 1902. That's 123 years ago next April. If you go back 123 years from 1902, you're still fighting the Revolutionary War. That monument sits halfway between the Revolutionary War and modern day, besides being part of our history of being South Reading before we became Wakefield in 1868.
Let me also comment about the number of people that showed up for Memorial Day. I was, you know, up at the front of the thing. You're correct. We had a large crowd when we started, okay, because people were looking forward to hearing the 21 gun salute. But it took an hour plus to go through the ceremony for Memorial Day. And during that time, we lost almost 50% of the crowd. They left. Okay. You need to keep people engaged, and listening to people speak doesn't do it. Okay. If you want to engage people, you got to have things for them to see and do.
Yeah, that's why we talked about that today. Yeah, exactly. I agree with you.
Okay, that sounds great. And we're all
And the last thing, Nancy, is the town council is going to be reassigning liaisons at our next meeting. So this may very well be my last meeting as your liaison. If it is, I've enjoyed working with you all over the last year. I don't know who is going to be assigned to be your liaison in the upcoming year.
Oh dear.
Every year we have to put in our list of what we'd like to do, but we often rotate it. So, although Joe Conway, I have to tell you, I am going to get public works this year. So you're going to be stuck with me, because I had fire my first year and police my second year. So I'm getting you my last year.
And we're looking forward to it.
But thank you all. I've enjoyed working with you.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, if we're done with that, I just want to ask you something, Dan. Do you remember? I remember a few years ago that there were banners of the showing images of Civil War soldiers hanging from the light poles. Dan Benjamin, do you remember this?
No,
You don't. I must have hallucinated the whole thing.
I've been in this
I
town
know I
for,
definitely saw them.
I've been in this town for 40 years and I've never seen that.
I have too, and I did, but you know, maybe it's
just the
you know,
present
time to
3 or 4 years, I think,
3 or 4 years.
somewhere. Maybe
Yeah.
just before COVID,
Could be.
which again is, I think, are the same that's in the Galvin School case as you come in.
No, they were definitely, I don't know where they came from, and I am starting to think that maybe, you know, I need to explore nursing home possibilities. Okay, well, with that, let's move on to the next item on our agenda, which is the MBTA zone.
Hmm.
That argument for creating the MBTA zone, if you remember from the town meeting, the planning board, it's a pretty complicated thing, but all communities served by the MBTA are supposed to allocate or a certain number of housing, multi-unit housing pieces within a certain amount of distance from MBTA stations or bus routes. And the planning board did a long study and had a focus group and a study group, and they ended up suggesting that there be, I think, 200 more of them than the town actually was required to establish. And worryingly, they centered these all on what is our historic downtown. And so, and there's no way of knowing whether this MBTA zone would take precedence over our demolition delay bylaw. So it was almost like putting out a welcome mat to developers to come in, take structures down, or make inappropriate changes to historic structures that are all there in our historic downtown and the heart of our community. Now, that was voted down at the town meeting, but I know the planning board is probably going to come up with another plan for the next town meeting. So I guess I'm asking all of you to keep an eye out for that, because this could be potentially very, very detrimental to our historic area, to our neighborhoods, and we really need to be on guard for making sure that we don't pack that area with developments that we can't fight against to preserve our history.
I think the town council was gonna come up with their own plan, I thought. So maybe we should talk to our next liaison about that.
Yeah, Ed Dombrowski had come up with an alternate plan. Apparently we'll lose a certain amount of state funding, grant funding, if the town doesn't accede to their the MBTA zone.
Ed's plan was to just do the minimum that the state required.
Right, but
And even that was voted down.
yeah, and the plan that Ed presented in his presentation showed a lot of people were touting this as, affordable housing. And he showed a picture of a historic structure on Chestnut Street near where he lives, which had been, I mean, telescoped up and changed almost completely, and each unit was going for over $700,000.
Yeah.
So they're not affordable.
Yeah.
And I understand there are court battles against the MBTA and the state for imposing this restriction, so maybe it'll all go away. But I would not be surprised if it raises its head again. And I just think we need to be alert.
Well, I don't know why they call it the MBTA zone, because we've lost half our bus routes, which were two. We've only got one now. And the
Right.
commuter this week, I think they're cutting that quite a bit, a number of hours, nothing after like 8:30, and it isn't picked up till around 3:30.
Right,
So MBTA here anyway.
right, yeah. And there's one community that just has a bus. And they were going to be required to do it as well, and they're suing the MBTA. So we don't know where it's going to end up. But when this arose, I was really, really concerned about it, both as a person who's interested in preserving historic structures and in somebody who lives on the west side, where I think we're approaching density max out in some of our areas. So, and you can't even drive downtown you can't get downtown from the west side going across Prospect Street. Sometimes it's a backup all the way to the top of Prospect
Especially when the gate doesn't work.
when the gate doesn't work. And it's
Like today again.
yeah. And the problem is that the new apps, which are so convenient and so wonderful for commuters that will help guide you away from trafficy situations, will bring you to residential neighborhoods like Prospect Street. And I think that a lot of that, what's it called? Wise? Yeah. A lot of wise people were on, because I would check out the app and see the little symbol of all the Wise cars going down Prospect Street. And change is good, but within measure. And it needs to be share the wealth. Let's share the wealth of multi-unit housing with other parts of the town as well.
Well, I don't know if people realize it, but the town of Wakefield pays something like $630,000 a year for the quote privilege of having the MBTA here in town.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Nancy, it's Julie Scott. Can I say something really quick?
Yep.
There is another aspect to what the governor's doing with housing, and this part has been sort of kept on the back burner, I think, until probably after the end of December, when communities have to comply with the MBTA 3A communities law. And it has to do with accessory dwellings. For example, if you have, and I don't know the dimensions, I don't have the law in front of me. If you have a garage and it meets a certain dimension demanded by the state, you could convert that into a living space. And it usually, like in Wakefield, it could be for a member of your family, like a grandparent. You could have an in-law apartment or something like that. The state is looking to make it something beyond that. That's something they started talking about probably 3 months ago. They saw people were jumping all over it. And between that and communities like Wakefield being upset with the MBTA 3A communities aspect of the law, the state has backed off on talking about the accessory unit issue, but that's not going away. They're smart. They know it's too much all at once, but research it, because I can see that having a particularly strong influence on the Church Street, Lafayette Street area of Wakefield, which is and in your area, the west side, because of what some people have in their driveways, garages and such. So just keep
And
that in
of
mind.
course, Wakefield does have a zoning bylaw that would not allow kind of front to back.
I bet the state law would
Would
supersede that.
trump it. Hate to use that word, but yeah, maybe it would trump it.
And a lot of
because-
communities make it so that you can do that for a family member. The state law would
Right.
also change that. So again, that the state put it out there, they immediately withdrew it. It's still there. It's not on the back burner. It's more on a front burner, but they barely talk about it. But if you research it, you can easily find it, but they're smart. They're not talking about it now. So it's really a double whammy. And they're only talking about one part of the whammy right now.
Yeah. I'm wondering if that isn't a way to get housing for our new immigrants.
Well,
Because
for Wakefield
people-
specifically, what we need to talk about in Wakefield is the parking, because they're talking about 1.5 cars per unit.
Mhm.
But we're talking about that before we're talking about accessory apartments being put in and made as living spaces. So the 1.5 will be drastically too little.
to say
So-
the least.
I don't mean to interject, but that's in the Wakefield item tonight. There's an
Oh, it
article
is?
about that
Okay.
item tonight.
Okay, haven't seen that yet. Thank you.
Yeah, that is another facet of the MBTA plan as well, the 1.5 parking spots, which would mean there's not enough parking for cars right now, especially in the wintertime. And so I think what we'd see is front lawns disappearing, green spaces disappearing. So it's like a domino effect. And we really have to be mindful of the character of the community, in my opinion.
You're here. I agree with you. Totally.
In any rate, I don't want to use up everybody's entire night. This is the end of my formal agenda. Does anybody have anything they want to discuss? No, hearing none. Thank you all for your kind attention. And we'll see you soon, maybe in a month. I'll be in touch. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Dan, that's the guy. Okay. Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so
Thanks.
much.